Is that a trick question? This man was a bona fide scrub. Bona fide scrub.
This dude, I believe he's a bona fide superstar right now.
Right. Oh, well, of course, it's all about winning, baby.
Yeah.
Welcome back to another episode of the Star and Scrub NBA podcast on this Thursday night, joined by Lee as usual. We're going to be going through the Southwest Division. This is a pretty crap division, to be honest. I've only got one of these teams making the playoffs, but I'm sure there'll be plenty of storylines nonetheless. But before we get into it, Lee, how are you in Melbourne, mate? A lot's been happening in that part of the world, and a little earthquake, which I'm not sure what's going on there, but a little earthquake happened. Tell us about your earthquake experience.
It still hasn't settled in that we had an earthquake. I really thought it was a meme. I mean, the week with the protesters we've had and obviously COVID rules and everything, and then out of the blue, I just said there's an earthquake happening. But, mate, I survived. We will fight on. We will rebuild here in Melbourne. So, how you going, though, mate? You well? No earthquakes to report?
No earthquakes, but apparently, I'm not sure if you've heard or seen, we're supposed to get snow down to ground level in Tasmania across the weekend, and we know Tas is a cold part of the world, but what on earth? Like, why are we getting snow at the end of September? What the fuck's that about?
Just the world we live in, I guess, mate.
Snow at the end of September? I don't get it. But anyway, where were you? Like, you were just at home, were you at work or something? Like, did you physically feel the earthquake? Tell me what happened.
Well, yeah, I was literally just working on my desk here, and because I'm up in an apartment building, it's pretty. And normally when it gets windy here, because like the house kind of shakes, I thought, hang on, it's pretty windy. I thought my upstairs neighbours getting a little bit rowdy or something, and then I look out my balcony, and all my neighbours leaning outside their balcony, freaking out, wondering what's going on. I look at social media, and it's all firing. So yeah, I can tick off that I survived it. That's
not where you'd want to be in an earthquake, like high up. You'd be like, were you shitting bricks? No. Literally, you just.
I was almost like laughing. I had no idea what was happening because I've never been in a natural disaster in my life. I didn't know what was going on, but mate, I guess I live to tell the tale. I'm glad I've got a podcast to bring up that I survived.
Oh dear, absolutely classic. There's some things going on in the world at the moment. Before we get into these teams, let's talk about a few interesting discussion points that are going on in the NBA at the moment. So let's start off with my Warriors. Andrew Wiggins, look, he doesn't want to get the COVID vaccine, and fair enough, that's not breaking any laws at the moment, but if he doesn't want to get it, then he can't enter Chase Center, obviously his home stadium, arena, to play basketball. So we're less than a month to go before the regular season starts, and I'm not sure what's going to happen here, but as of right now, Andrew Wiggins is not vaccinated, and the city of San Francisco says that you cannot enter Chase Center or basically any other major area with large amounts of people without being vaccinated. There's probably going to be other players in the NBA that are in the same situation. This is just obviously a huge one because it's San Francisco and New York that basically have these mandates, I guess, or laws in place, and Andrew Wiggins happens to play for the Golden State Warriors, who are obviously in San Francisco. So I'm not sure what's going to happen. Latest reports are that he's going to get a religious exemption from the NBA, which is fair enough, but then that doesn't actually stop San Francisco government, I guess, or the department, whatever it is, from actually preventing him from still going to the stadium and being able to play. So the religious exemption from the NBA doesn't actually really mean too much at the end of the day. That just means more for he can go to away games and play. The other funny aspect to it, I wrote an article earlier today, hasn't been published yet for Blue Man Hoop, but I actually found out and checked up that the Warriors have 9 of their first 12 games of the season are actually at home at Chase Center. So they actually need to get this shit sorted. It's not like they've got a bunch of away games at the start of the season, which means like they can just take a bit of extra time. They've got 9 of their first 12 at home. So do you have any thoughts on this? Like, it's a weird situation. It was bound to happen. It's just surprising, I guess, that it's actually a Warriors player. The Nets are probably the other team. I think it's been reported that 2 of their players, they haven't been named, but 2 of their players might also be in a similar situation, and they've got to be vaccinated to go into their arena, so I don't know.
I've never been part of this professional sports team, but I'd imagine they'd get like shots of like painkillers and everything like that every now and then from team doctors and stuff. And I don't reckon they'll say anything about those vaccines, but I don't know. And I wasn't expecting Andrew Wiggins. When do you ever hear him like arc up or cause any sort of trouble as a bloke?
Yeah, he's pretty like quiet and measured, isn't he? Like
low maintenance type of guy. And he's an anti-vaxxer. He's out of nowhere.
Like, you'd expect this from some players, but Andrew Wiggins isn't one of them. And I know there's an interesting dynamic there, given he obviously used to play with Karl Anthony Towns, and we know how damaging COVID's been to Cat's family, losing his mum and I think 5 other family members and stuff. So as former teammates, I find that a little bit of a strange situation. And you would have thought that maybe those two guys are still maybe somewhat close, and Wiggins would see the situation that's happened with Cat's family and maybe just think, yeah, for the safety of everyone around me, I might just go get a needle in my arm. It's, yeah, I've had my first dose. It didn't hurt. I don't really understand. Even if you're like against it, surely you just understand that, hey, if I get this done, the quicker we can return to some kind of normality or what we perceive as normal kind of thing. So just, even if you think it hurts a bit or something, like unless you've got you've gone to the doctor and the doctor, if you've gone to the doctor and the doctor says no, do not take this, like then yeah, fair enough. But I don't know, it just doesn't make much sense to me. Anyway, on to another Warriors thing. Joe Lacob got fined $50,000 for his comments around Ben Simmons, which is really fascinating to me because they were negative comments. Like it wasn't like he was like, I want Ben Simmons. We're going to trade for Ben Simmons kind of thing. It was, we don't really want Ben Simmons. His fit next to Draymond is questionable. Can he actually finish games given what we saw in the playoffs? Like Joe Lacob was being really negative about Ben Simmons, and I guess the thoughts are that he's kind of continuing to drive down his trade value maybe, and maybe they get to a point where Philadelphia come calling like, we'll just take Andrew Wiggins straight up for Ben Simmons. And then Joe Lacob was like, yes, this is what I wanted. I don't know. This
is what you want.
Yeah.
Do you reckon the NBA is going to step into this Simmons situation? Because obviously a lot of people demand like to get out of their contracts now, but it's a horrible look for NBA teams. He's got 4 years left and he can just imagine if he actually gets his wish and gets to go anywhere. That's the bad precedent. So do you back the NBA to step in and say, no, not having, like this is the first step of them stepping in and they're going to try and do something else?
I don't think the NBA will necessarily step in because I'm not sure how much they can, apart from doing things like this where other teams and owners of other teams or general managers or whoever it is actually comes out and comments on it publicly, then of course they can fine them $50,000 or whatever. But what's $50,000 to Joe Lacob? Like he's a billionaire kind of thing. Like
he's a billionaire.
Who cares? I don't know. It's not really like, is he going to be discouraged by it? Probably not. Like are other billionaires going to be discouraged by it? Probably not. Like the only thing I guess is that the NBA would probably back Philadelphia in their, I guess, attitude, which is, hey, if you don't turn up to training camp and then, after that you don't turn up to games and whatever else, we're going to not pay you. We're going to fine you, what is it, $300K, like a session almost? Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
I think the NBA in that situation would be like, yeah, you got every right to do that. They're not going to back Ben Simmons in that situation, but how much they can actually do, I'm not too sure. Have you got any thoughts on what the NBA could do, I guess, to try and fix this situation almost?
I reckon that we would have to do something because the Harden thing was the first step, and then if players are going to take that as a precedent, hey, it doesn't matter if I've signed a 5-year contract. And I think they fear Zion doing the same thing in the end, because I'm sure we'll talk about in there. The Minnesota Timberwolves actually. How do you say his name? Gershon
Rosas, I think, or Rosas is
the first time I've ever heard his name. I reckon got to let go today. Apparently, the toxic culture he's created at the Minnesota Timberwolves, as you know, a record of just losing in every aspect of the game. Did you have any thoughts about it? Did you?
I guess it sums up Minnesota as a franchise across the last decade or so. Like firing your general manager like less than a week from training camp. It's just shithouse timing. It might be the right decision in the end. I don't know enough about Gershon Rosas or his replacement in Sachin Gupta, I think his name is, which is now the second biggest Sachin in the world outside Sachin Tendulkar. So that's cool. But anyone from America or non-Commonwealth countries will have no idea who we're talking about there. But anyway, I don't really know enough about the situation to comment, but I guess from an outside point of view, it just shows Minnesota's lack of any kind of, I don't know, Yeah, I've got no words for the situation, really. It just sums up Minnesota over the last decade, I guess.
Well, I think a lot of heat's been put towards Karl Anthony's tweet today. All he said was "wow," but
no, he didn't say. He said WTF. WTF was the tweet, which is quite ironic. And then everyone's just seen that and just exploded and gone, "Cat wants out. What trade can we come up with for Cat?" Settle down a little bit, but yeah, people are just like thinking that Cat is going to want to trade in the next 12 months or so, which could be interesting because he'd be a massive get for anyone. I'd love him on my Warriors. But anyway, let's get into it. Otherwise, we're going to be going all day here. Let's start with the Dallas Mavericks here. Very interesting franchise. They did a little bit in the off season, but nothing like major. I didn't think. Notable ins: Moses Brown, Reggie Bullock from the Knicks, Sterling Brown, Frank the Tank Ntilikina from the Knicks, Jason Kidd. They got a new head coach there as well. That's probably the major thing, I guess. They re-signed Luka, Tim Hardaway Jr., Big Boban Marjanovic, JJ Redick has retired, Josh Richardson has gone as well. Their over-under line here is 48.5. My question to you is, because the one player here that I think the future of Dallas almost surrounds, and I'm not talking about Luka, because we know what Luka is. We know Luka's a superstar. We know he's probably going to maybe win the MVP this year or win maybe a couple MVPs throughout his career. Kristaps Porzingis, do you have any faith in him rediscovering the potential that made him a $30+ million player?
No, is to put it simply. I watched the Knicks Porzingis and then the Mavericks one, and I just watched a couple of breakdown videos. And the big criticism of him is that he hasn't evolved. So he actually hasn't. He's got that one sort of face up, and because he's 7'3", can shoot over anyone. But in terms of post moves, he hasn't obviously put on size so he can back people down. He can't dribble around short at like guards or anything like that. He hasn't really evolved in terms of a player. And I've heard a lot of tensions built up. He hates the attention that comes along with Luka. I've heard he's even alluded that Luka's a ball hog of sorts, and I think that's almost on him. Like if he was more effective, if he could actually stay on the court, maybe he'd actually get the ball though. So I worry about his attitude. I mean, you and I think we talk once a week about players' attitudes and mental toughness and everything, and you can almost get a sense from them. And in terms of Porzingis wanting to be great, I don't think he has that same thing, because he just seemed to a completely different player when he was at the Knicks in terms of mentality. He seemed pretty tough. Like he was going up contesting every shot, and a completely different attitude. And I think he's completely lost that at the Mavericks. His confidence will be down though. He's not on the court enough, and obviously all the attention's at Luka. But yeah, from the Porzingis I see now, he doesn't look anything close to that player that signed a $30 million a year. Do you like it? Yeah, do you like him as a player?
I like the idea of him. Is that fair? I like the idea of him. 7'3" with that skill set. Look, this might sound a bit harsh, but I think it's factual that there are some NBA players out there who are happy to get their big contract, their money, and kind of just wander through the contract and not necessarily strive to be the best they can possibly be. And I don't think there's any harm in that. Like, good on him for getting the $30 million contract, and it's going to piss off Mavericks fans, but from a non-Mavericks fan point of view, if he just wants to wander through his contract and not try and be the best he can be, then that's up to him. That's fine. He still gets his money. It's disappointing from a fan's point of view because I think he can be a great player in the league. But if he wants to do that, then so be it. From a Mavericks point of view right now and in the playoffs last season, you're paying $30 million for a 7'3" spot-up shooter. That is literally... Because when Luka handles the ball, he sits out on the perimeter and literally just waits for the ball to be passed to him. And I don't know. I think some of the attitude is, you just spoke about it a bit there, his post-game. I watched him in multiple games last year against my Warriors and in other games against other teams. And there were times, the Warriors would be going with Draymond Green at center at 6'6". Now, Draymond Green's one of the best defenders this league's seen in the last, ever, throughout history.
Ever. Yeah,
but he's 6'6" at the end of the day. And Kristaps, you're 7'3", mate. You're going up against these guys that are nearly like a foot shorter than you. Can you not just back them down and just shoot over the top of them from a couple of feet?
No, he can't.
Like the only thing he has is a face up mid range from the mid range area, and it's just like, really? Like that's like sometimes it'll go in and it looks great, and you're just like, oh yeah, well that's clearly what he does. He's 7'3" and he can shoot over anyone. Like it's kind of like a Kevin Durant situation. But he just doesn't have the mentality or the attitude. And he's not KD in terms of the ball handling and stuff like that. But right now you're paying $30 million for a spot-up shooter, and you can get that for $10 million. So
you can get that for $10 million.
You can get that on the veterans minimum. Like, I don't know.
Probably. It's really hard as a Mavericks fan, I'd imagine. It's a fantastic story. 2 European generational talents. they're both young, could dominate for the next decade, but he just won't make it up. Obviously Luka is the Mavericks of the Luka.
Sorry, can I just finish up on the Porzingis chat just before we move on from that? I just want to say one thing. We were just talking about his offensive game. It's also his defense. Okay, for starters, he's 7'3" and he just doesn't really rebound much for a guy that's 7'3". And when he came into the league, we thought, wow, 7'3", long wingspan, can be a shot blocker. Doesn't really do that. And then we kind of thought with his athleticism when he came into the league, might actually be able to switch out onto the perimeter a little bit. I understand why injuries may have kind of derailed that idea, but now he almost becomes a defensive liability as well, where if he's brought out on the perimeter, he just can't guard anyone. And he's not as a good enough shot blocker now where that makes him useful either. So it's not just the offensive side of the ball where he's a spot-up shooter, as I said, and does really not much else. It's also the defensive side of the ball where he's a flat-out liability to the point where is he actually in your best 5 players down the stretch of playoff games? I don't know.
He averaged 2.4 in that year, that next year. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. He averaged 2.4
second
blocks
season
in that
or something.
year. Yeah, night and day, the sort of player he is. But yeah, it's horrible. He got exposed so easy on those pick and rolls against the Clippers. But yeah, obviously they made the move for Luka. They brought in Jason Kidd. I want to see, do you reckon the Mavericks are doing enough to keep Luka happy, at least at this stage? Do you reckon in terms of moves, the players they're bringing in, do you reckon they're doing enough to keep him happy, at least at this stage?
Well, the fact that he re-signed on a max contract suggests so, yeah, but he was always going to do that. I don't think that was really ever a question mark.
$200 million.
It's $200 million. You're not going to give that up, are you? But in answer to your question, no. I think they're just doing nothing at the moment. And I don't know, we'll get to where you believe they'll finish. I actually have them fairly high up, surprisingly high up, given how bad I think this roster is. I just think a lot of Luka in terms of, I watched him in the Olympics with a bunch of kind of nobodies, and he still carried them to a bronze medal game with a bunch of absolute nobodies. Yeah. Like, this guy's ability, almost, LeBron-esque back in the early days of his career with the Cavs, where you've just got a bunch of, not scrubs, but just average players, and he can basically carry a team, like a LeBron did, like a James Harden, I think, can at times, or did with Houston a little bit, where there's not much around him, but just the greatness of him as a scorer, as a playmaker. He can carry this team to the playoffs at a minimum. But yeah, in terms of, they're not in championship contention with their current roster. They need another superstar next to him. And even if Porzingis ever reached that, I'm still not sure that would be enough. Like, in the league these days, you need two top 15 players, and if it's not 2 top 15 players, it's probably 3 top 25 players. And right now they have 1 top 5 player and probably the next best player. I don't know. What's Porzingis been ranked in Sports Illustrated or ESPN's top 100? Maybe, I don't know what it is. I need to have a look at it after this, but I'd say he's past 50. He wouldn't be in the top 50, would he? I don't think so.
No.
I saw Ben Simmons was around 36, and I'd still have Simmons ahead of him. So, yeah.
I think, you've seen what happened to Harden in Houston. He just run out of steam at the end of each season. So I think that's what they think. I think they're doing okay. I like the Jason Kidd addition as well. Like Rick Carlisle's a championship coach. He beat my Heat. And so just to get rid of something that's been working for a while, I guess they're in the playoffs each year, and so they moved him there. And it's not really, I think we found out it's actually Porzingis' fault. Like when you made that trade, and in theory it sounded good.
Yeah.
And they're owed, all their picks are owed to the Knicks for the next few years because of that. So, so where did you have? You said you had them pretty high. Where do you have them finishing?
Yeah, I was looking at my Western Conference rankings again today, and I don't really understand how I had them 4th, but I did. And again, I don't like this roster. It's more about how highly I rate Luka. I think they're going to be a pretty good regular season team. Again, I just don't think they're a championship team. But I had them 4th. That's just where the puzzle fell. I had the Clippers and the Nuggets beneath them. That's basically because Murray and Leonard are out. Obviously, if Jamal Murray's there for the Nuggets, if Kawhi's there for the Clippers, then they fall down to 6th. I also think that my Warriors have higher upside than Dallas do. So if things click for the Warriors, they could definitely be a better team than the Mavericks. So, yeah, that's where I had them, though. What about you?
I've got them 7th. I've got them pretty low, because based on just how, like, especially the Western teams, the ones I've got are Utah, great regular season, Denver, great regular season teams, Suns, Lakers. So all those teams I've got them are just fantastic regular season teams. But yeah, seventh, and probably a little bit, maybe even under that.
Under 48.5. Yeah, I might have the slightly over, but that's a no bet for me. I think I'm just slightly scared about. Remember last season's predictions? I had them ninth, missing the playoffs. And they actually didn't start the season that well, but they eventually went on a bit of a run and finished sixth, I think. So,
something like that.
Yeah, maybe I'm just scared about the fact that I had them ninth last year and I don't want to do that again. So I'm just going the complete other direction. But I'm probably going to be wrong. But yeah, for some reason I just had them there.
Luka might have been a dark horse for MVP. Dark horse, probably one of the favourites for MVP.
I think he's favourite.
Up next. He's favourite, yeah, well, fair enough. Up next, the Houston Rockets.
Alrighty, the Houston Rockets obviously made the major move of trading out James Harden early last season. I think they've actually bounced back pretty well, given how poor I thought the trade was at the time, but they've kind of gone into this youth movement direction, which they've actually kind of transitioned into, I think, pretty quickly. The ins for them, notable ins, the draft. Jalen Green, Josh Christopher, Alperen Sengun, Usman Garuba, four first round picks there, which I think is really handy, and a couple of guys there that project to be high level NBA players. I think Daniel Tice comes in as well, a bit of a weird one, but anyway. They re-signed David Nwaba, Dante Exum, the Australian. Great to see him finally get a contract. Out goes Kelly Olynyk and Avery Bradley, who's still on the free agent scrap heap. I think he's working out with my Warriors at the moment. I would love him as the 15th man on the roster, to be honest. I think he's still got something to give in the NBA, but this is not a segment about Avery Bradley. This is a segment about the Houston Rockets. So they also trade out James Harden last year. They get Jalen Green in, all these young guys. What's the timeline for you? Because they've obviously done a full reset, but as I said, I think they've done really well to kind of transition really quickly into this. What's the timeline for this team to make the playoffs and return to some kind of championship contention? If there's Houston fans out there listening at the moment, what's the range for you in terms of how many seasons until you think they can get back to what they were with James Harden, I guess?
Very quickly, I reckon. When the Harden trade happened, I thought, what on earth did they just get back for it at all? But I think it's turned absolutely wonderful. I don't see longer than 2-3 years, and I'd have them close to even pushing for the lower seed in the playoffs, honestly. Jalen Green was as advertised, and probably even more. I can't believe how efficient of a scorer he is. Christian Wood, obviously, we know. Sengun, I reckon, has some upside to him. So, and I think I've lauded onto teams that actually develop talent really well. Christian Wood looked, when he's on the court, actually, I should say, but when he looks 20 in 10, I reckon you can book him in for. So if his signs the same, and Kevin Porter Jr. as well, he looks like he's finally getting his things sorted. So I reckon just because they have the developed talent really well, and Jalen Green, I think, will be box office, and I don't see longer than 2-3 years. Do you see the same optimism?
Yeah, no, I agree. I thought the transition has been fantastic. They got a couple of players last season as well that after that Harden trade kind of got more opportunity and made a bit of a leap. I was really impressed with Jay Sean Tate, who just kind of came out of nowhere. He used to play in the NBL, I think, with the Sydney Kings. He came out, was like their starting small forward, and all of a sudden was like really good, just randomly. So they found some guys last season. Christian Wood, I mean, I wasn't surprised with how well he played when he was on the court. When he signed that contract with the Rockets after obviously being with the Pistons, I thought that was one of the best contracts I've seen in recent times in terms of what was about $10 million a season for 4 years. Like, I think he should be getting close to double that, 20. But anyway, good on Houston, I guess. I agree. 2-3 seasons. Josh Green, I think, is going to have some games this year where he puts up 30, 35 points and wins them some games. That's how good I think he can be this year. He's probably my favourite. We'll obviously get into our Rookie of the Year and other award predictions in another episode, but he's probably my favourite for Rookie of the Year at this point. So, 2-3 seasons and they can be back in the playoffs, I think.
I reckon that'd just be so fun to watch this season, and just shout out to Dante Exum. I'm glad he's got that contract sorted. Well, obviously, they're starting to make moves in the right direction. Obviously, Jalen Green we love. What do you want to see, though, in this first season, I guess, as they start that transition to that 2-3 year plan we just talked? What do you want to see the most, I reckon?
Jalen Green's the one. I just, how many of these 4 draftees project to be starting caliber NBA players? Because to me, if you can end this season and you know that, hey, two of these players are going to be starting for us going forward, whether it's probably at this stage, it's probably going to be Green and Sengun. But if you can get at least two that you know are going to be basically guaranteed starters for the next 10 years of your franchise, hopefully, and that's the aim, I think that's a really good result. And the other, I mean, Jalen Green's probably the biggest one, the biggest factor in that you always look at these young guys coming in and it's like, what can he project as? Can he project as being the best player on a championship team? Can he project as the second best or the third best player on a championship level team? So I guess it's trying to understand and evaluate where he and his future lies in terms of trying to build a championship level team. Because obviously, if you think he can be the best player on a championship team, then you just have to build around him. If you think he's the second or third best, then obviously you might have to try and acquire some other players, whether it be through trade or whether it be through the draft. What was it for you in terms of what you'd like to see as, you know, if you're a Houston fan?
Probably Kevin Porter Jr. and just his development. Obviously, he had some off-court issues, to put it lightly, when he was in Cleveland, and I think there's been issues about it, just as a locker room person. But he's come along really, really, really well. And I saw games where he was initiating a lot of the offense, and he was getting double-digit assists. And what I'd want to see is if he can be the Houston Rockets' future point guard. I'd love to see. I mean, he's 6'6", 6'7", I believe. Yeah. He can score from all three levels, and he's not shy in shooting shots. So I wanted to see not just the assists where he just gets double digits, where he's actually making people around him better. Because I think a backcourt, if you've got Kevin Porter Jr. as your starting point guard and then Jalen Green, that's just excitement to say the very least. So I'd love to see if he can be a future point guard. But I've said all this stuff about their excitement. I've got them finishing last, though. I've got them finishing 15th, just because I think the West is just deep enough as it is. And I think, they're putting a lot of young people, not just young people, but a lot of young people together for the first time. I think that's going to be a lot to ask, especially in those big clutch games. Where do you have them?
I've got them 14th, the spot above. I've got them above the Thunder. You got the Thunder above them. I guess your argument, and I've heard this argument a little bit, is that Houston don't have the player as a caliber of player like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander there. Exactly I think Christian Wood's really good, and I think Jalen Green initially is going to be better than what Josh Giddey is. I also think that Houston have just drafted 4 guys. I think their attitude towards it is they're going to be more, or they're going to be trying to win more than what the Thunder are. I think the Thunder are still in a process where they're actually happy to lose. Like we saw at the end of last season, where early last season, the Thunder are actually better than what they really wanted to be. And then all of a sudden, later in the season, Shea was just getting sat for games for no particular, like some fake injury would come up or something where like they just wanted to sit him because they didn't want to win. And I still think they're in that mode where they want another season of losing, where they want to try and get the number 1 pick kind of thing. As Houston have got their Jalen Green, depending on what we see from Sengun, those types. I think they want to win, and I can't see the same for the Thunder. Now I might be completely wrong once the season starts, kind of thing, but that's just how I see it. Houston will have more of an appetite to win games than the Thunder will.
I think Houston have turned this James Harden situation around absolutely amazingly, because Harden not only got out of there because he wanted to, but he also thrived with the Nets. But now they've got their star of the future, and I think Houston Rockets won't be too far away. 2-3 years I've got them in.
So their line is at 27.5, and I have them above the Thunder, but the Thunder are at 21.5, and I just don't think there's a 6-game difference. For all that I just said, there's not a 6-game difference. So even though I've got them above the Thunder, I've still got them under 27.5. I'm not banking them to win that many games. As I said, I think Jalen Green could have some 30-point games where he actually wins them some games. But, 27.5 for me. I'm assuming you've obviously got them last. You've got them well under that.
Well under. That's really weird, actually. That's that high.
It's not. It's still a 27 and what's that? 82 game season, 27 and 55 kind of thing. Like it's still a bad season, kind of thing. But it just seems I have them better than the Thunder, but not by a 6-game difference. But anyway, enough of that. We'll get in next to the Memphis Grizzlies.
Memphis Grizzlies up next. pretty underrated big season off season they had, I reckon. Steven Adams has come in, Jarrett Culver, Chris Dunn, Zaire Williams, which they traded up for. They didn't really re-sign anyone notable that I put down here. Out goes Grayson Allen, Jonas Valanciunas, and Justice Winslow. Obviously very exciting, Ja Morant being the centre of that excitement. I was wondering how, I guess, you looking at their future, do you see them being the next, because I looked at the Milwaukee Bucks, I looked at Phoenix Suns, small marketish teams, found their young star, able to build in an almost organic way. Do you see them being that next team, if you were to pick a team in the West to be that next organically built small market team?
Not as currently constructed. I mean, if you talk about Milwaukee compared to Memphis, I mean, Giannis is just on a complete different universe. He is. He's going to go down as one of, I think he's got the best CV, what is he, 25, 26? I think he's got the best CV of someone that age that probably there's ever been, after capping that off with a championship. And he's just on a completely different level to Ja Morant in terms of, I think Ja Morant's great. And Ja Morant could get everything out of himself and become the best player he could possibly be. He's not a 6'11" athletic freak. He's just not. He's an athletic freak, but he's only 6'3". So again, there's a ceiling on how good Ja Morant can be. And I hate to bring this up again because it seems to come up every other episode. 6'3" guard. Can you build around them and win a championship? Until I see otherwise, which I nearly did with the Phoenix Suns.
True.
I'm saying, no, you cannot, and therefore Ja Morant is not the best player on a championship team. And look, I've got to give the Grizzlies credit, because to me, I look at their roster and I just think, they're not great. But the last couple of seasons, they've really defied expectation. And I think last season I had them 12th, because I just expected them to take a jump back. And no, they defied my expectation and actually beat my Warriors in the final playing game to take that 8th seed. So I've got to give them respect, and I've given them a bit more respect this season than I did last season. But yeah, for me, I don't know. It's just, with a 6'3" point guard, it just can't be, you can't win a championship like that. So as currently constructed, no, I do not see the Memphis Grizzlies winning a championship in the next 10 years. If they draft someone or acquire someone that is a 6'7", 6'8" wing who is the best player and Ja Morant's the second best player, cool, great, it can happen. Not as currently constructed.
I just love the way they're organically building players. Dylan Brooks out of nowhere has become almost like a little defensive stopper in a way, player. So I kind of really like the way they're going about it. I love Ja Morant. I reckon he's probably my favourite point guard. And I might even go as far. I reckon there'll be a time where Ja Morant will be the best point guard in the NBA. I sincerely believe that.
Really? Okay, so with that in mind, I've got to. I love asking these kind of questions, and I think I asked one last week in regards to someone else. Ja Morant can be the what best player on a championship team? After you just said he could be the best point guard in the league, is that good enough to be the best player on a championship team?
Well, we'll have to concede that you are right about the guard thing in terms of having an undersized guard. But I think, he can be a number. He'll be a number 2. But I love Ja Morant in the way that he plays winning basketball. You just mentioned, so the Memphis Grizzlies have defied all expectations. Jarrett Jackson Jr. is supposed to be the second best player on that team. He's missed a lot of time, and they still win. There was patches of games where Ja Morant will be out and they'd still win. I mean, the fact that he literally made playoffs, I don't think that's underrated. And then he went up against Utah Jazz, who were the best regular season team in the NBA, so he didn't really have a shot in there. But he had a 47-point game in his second playoff game ever. So I love the fact that he plays winning basketball out of everyone. And in that draft class, I mean, Zion Williamson obviously was taken number 1, and he gets all the allure, but Ja Morant is carrying his team. In the Lillard way of a guard that's went to a smaller school and he wasn't highly recruited, and incredible story. And I just love the way he comes across in his sense. You got a feeling that he wants to be great, and I see him. Yeah, I'm very, very happy with Ja Morant. Well, you'd love him though, just as a player though. You'd love the way he plays. Yeah,
and the funny thing is, he can actually get better. I think his shot is still dodgy. His outside three-point shot. I watched him in that playing game against the Warriors, and he actually hit a few, but it was the last game of the regular season to determine who would actually get the 8th seed before the playing tournament. I know that sounds weird, kind of confusing to say now, but that's what it was, the last game of the regular season. And I remember the Warriors just kind of left him wide open, and he couldn't hit the side of a barn door with his jump shot. And I looked at him and I thought, how is this guy this good? He's 6'3" and he has no jumper. It doesn't make any sense. And then to be fair to him, he started the start of that playing game for the 8th seed, they continued to go under screens against him, and he made them pay. And I don't think the shot looks great, but he was making them. And at this point, I think it's it's going to be inconsistent. It's just whether he can patch that up, clean it up a little bit, and become a consistent jump shooter and really punish teams who want to go under the screen kind of thing because they're scared of him getting downhill and getting to the rim, because once that happens, it's really difficult to stop him. So it's going to be about that jump shot for mine, and that can improve significantly, and therefore his game can improve significantly, especially if teams have to start respecting his jump shot. So if that happens, yeah, he could be, as you say, the best point guard in the league at some point in the future. I do agree with that. So, yeah, anyway, their line is 40.5. That's a tough line, I think. It's a no bet for me, but what did you have?
Yeah, no bet for myself as well. The West is just deep. I had them finishing 9th, actually, in the just purely on the basis. For my love of Ja Morant, the West is tough, and I'd love to see some top-end talent. Like Jarrett Jackson Jr. is coming back, and Zaire Williams. I don't know about Zaire Williams. I mean, he's really highly touted in high school, but yeah, he had a disappointing college season, so who knows?
Yep.
But I've got them finishing 9th. Do you have them making playoffs?
No, but I'm glad. We had a bit of a disagreement about the Mavericks. You had them 7th, I had them 4th, and then we had a bit of a disagreement about the whole Thunder and Rockets thing. But we agree with this one. I have them 9th as well. I had them 12th last season. I don't think anything's changed apart from my thoughts, I guess, about them. They're this similar kind of team. I don't think they've made any major differences. It's just going to be about Ja getting better. Jaren Jackson Jr., I think, is the X factor. I follow some people on Twitter who are just massive Jaren Jackson Jr. fans and think he's going to be like most improved and just turn into this great player. And I don't see it at this point, but who knows? Maybe they see something I don't. Stretch big, I think he could be a really good pairing with Ja Morant. I'm not sure he's ever going to be, because the prototype that he is 6'10", 6'11", can shoot the ball, has some athleticism. He could project to be the best player on a championship team, but I'm not saying that about Jaren Jackson Jr. at this stage, that's for sure. Like, I don't think he's ever going to get to that level. His prototype is the correct prototype, to be the best player on a championship team, but it's not going to happen with Jaren Jackson Jr., I don't think, but who knows? All of a sudden he might come out this year and be some kind of all-star, near all-star caliber.
Let's just see. Let's see him get on the court first, and then we'll start projecting.
That's true. He's had some serious injury issues. Yeah, which, again, as you said before, it's amazing how much they win when he's supposed to be their second best player, and he's not there for the majority of the time. But anyway, we're going no bets on that at 40.5, and we both have them 9th. Anyway, next up we'll get into the New Orleans Pelicans.
The New Orleans Pelicans have had underratedly, again, a big off-season as well. Devontae Graham was, a big in. Thomas Satoransky, Garrett Temple, all coming from the Bulls, Jonas Valanciunas. They re-signed Josh Hart, Willie Hernan-Gomez, and they lost Lonzo Ball, Steven Adams, and Eric Bledsoe, and James Johnson, if you want to think about it. And so a lot
notable.
Is notable. A lot's been said about James Johnson.
Full respect, James Johnson. I don't know what. Yeah, that's a bit harsh. Had a good NBA career, good player.
He's still around, so I can't knock him too much. But a lot's been made of Zion.
Big part of your Miami Heat for a few years, by the way.
Yeah, I probably shouldn't laugh too much.
Don't know why you're laughing.
I think the way you said it, notable. I want to know, though, to you, mate, is this a make-or-break type of season for the Pelicans? Because a lot has been said about how unhappy Zion Williamson is. Brandon Ingram has almost plateaued in a way. Do you think this is a make-or-break season for them?
Yeah, because Zion's going to be up for a contract extension, and if he doesn't sign it and goes through the whole next year and becomes a free agent at the end of next season, yes, he'll be a restricted free agent, but that is worrying times. And I mean, Anthony Davis hung around for a little bit longer than obviously just the 4 years, but it could almost be the death of this franchise if Zion leaves at the end of next season. It could
fair enough. That's absolutely
it could be
enough.
The death of this franchise. So I don't know. You said that a big off season. Does big mean good? Because I don't think it was good. I think it was bad. Replacing Devontae Graham with Lonzo. I like Devontae Graham as a backup. It's like a 6-man. He can get you a few buckets, maybe. Cool, but he's going to be a starter there, and I don't particularly like it. So, yeah, I don't know. What do you think? Is this a make or break year for them?
I really do, because I was just, I guess, looking up the Pelicans, and I guess they've had CP3, which they, I guess, ruined. Anthony Davis walked out the door and publicly walked out the door, and now Zion Williamson is already unhappy in his second season or so. So I think not even just that this team, but as a franchise, for their reputation, any young person wanting to go there in the future, they look at them and say, "Nah, I don't get me as far away from that as you can." So yeah, mate, I couldn't agree more. I think every game,
Yeah, I don't actually understand what's kind of wrong with them. I'm not sure if it's a coaching thing. That's why they've obviously brought in a new coach there with Van Gundy going out the door. I just wonder if that's going to be changed, because Zion and Brandon Ingram, to me, should be a playoff team, almost regardless of what you put around them. Now you put Valanciunas around them. I like Jonas Valanciunas. I think he's an upgrade on Steven Adams.
Yeah.
With that kind of, with like those two blokes, like they should just be a playoff team. Those two blokes should be better than Ja Morant and Jaren Jackson Jr. and the rest of the Memphis Grizzlies. So why the hell are they not? Because I've got them again ranked behind the Grizzlies. But why? Like, it's like this is purely a franchise thing. Like, where they've just, like, what is it?
It's definitely management, and because they cut players, and like I remember Rondo is probably one of the best things to ever happen to them, and then they just got rid of him. They let him kind of leave, and Drew Holiday obviously gave away. So I think it's a horribly managed franchise, and if they ruin this Zion thing, who's a generational talent, and just how much better he was getting, even for the pieces around him, people in and out of the lineups, how much better he got mid-season. You really don't want to be screwing this up.
Yeah, well, my question to you is, should 100% of the front office's attention be on keeping Zion happy? Should that like take precedence over every single thing?
Absolutely, it should. And if it means trading Brandon Ingram, so be it, because everything needs to be surrounded around keeping Zion as happy as possible. And why I'd be almost, I guess, optimistic in a way is because Zion, he's playing that Giannis type of role, the big guy who can handle the ball, and I'm sure he could have a defensive side to his game. And I think Brandon Ingram's great trade material, I reckon. He's still under contract, he's young, he was an all-star, we can't forget, high pick as well. So I think you could get a star in there, like even if it's a younger star to pair with him. I think that's great trade material. But some of the management, I mean, Devontae Graham and a first-round pick went with that Devontae Graham signing as well. So I really wonder if they've put the best type of team around them, because they're already horrible defensively. I think like a bottom 5 defensive team. I don't know if they even did enough this off season. And do you reckon I'll throw another question here. The Lonzo Ball loss, do you reckon that's going to get them in the end?
Yeah, probably defensively. And ball handling duties. I mean, maybe it gets the ball in Zion and Brandon Ingram, especially Zion's hands, a little bit more, which is probably a positive. But yeah, I think Lonzo Ball is a better player than anyone. Like, he's better than Devontae Graham, and he's better than anyone else they've got there. So yeah, I'd be disappointed about the fact that we let him go and didn't get a whole lot in return. So yeah, their over-under line is 38.5. What have you got there, and where have you got them in the Western Conference rankings?
38.5. Maybe even under that, because I've got them finishing 10th. You said you had them just behind Memphis. So do you have them? Yeah, that's 10th as well.
No, I've got them 11th.
Oh, 11th.
I've got them 11th.
Okay, yeah.
So I don't know. So here's another question. If you're Zion Williamson and you have this team next to Brandon Ingram and all these other guys that you have, which aren't great, but Zion and BI are 2 all-star caliber players. If this team can't make the playoffs, are you signing a max extension next offseason?
Absolutely not. It would hurt so much seeing other young players thriving. From what I can see, his mates like Trae Young and all those blokes, they're having the time of their lives, making playoffs somewhere. So seeing them, knowing you're better, you're probably better than most of them as well. That would hurt really badly. And 3 coaches in 3 years, and they can't put a team around you. No one would blame you if you walked out, I don't reckon. I think that's another reason why I'd be happy to not sign.
Yeah, I wouldn't do it. At least all I can say from a Pelicans point of view is this isn't quite okay. You asked this question before, is it make or break? I'm going to actually re-answer it. It's not quite make or break.
Okay.
Because if they suck this year and Zion doesn't sign a contract extension, then next season is definitely make or break. But this season's really important in terms of you don't want to get to that situation where it's make or break next season. You want to be good this year. You want to make the playoffs. You want to allow and give Zion the opportunity and want to sign an extension in the offseason and not even get to the point where you have to go through next season wondering if he's going to re-sign or not in free agency. You don't want to get to that stage. That would be the make or break stage for me. This is not quite it, but it is very important nonetheless.
Do you reckon playing's enough for you to sign? If you make a play-in tournament, do you reckon that's enough?
Well, that's top 10. This is the problem with the play-in, is it's top 10. Like,
yeah, actually.
10 of the 15 teams make the play-in. Like, no.
So playoffs.
It has to be the playoffs to me for him to want to sign that. I mean, we could be totally wrong. He could just want the money, and he can get more money at the Pelicans than anywhere else. I think. So maybe he just takes the money and says, "Yeah, I'm signing another 5 years." And even if he has 9 years at the Pelicans, which is around what I think Anthony Davis had 8. So at the end of the day, and Anthony Davis is still in his prime, and he's his third season with the Lakers kind of thing. So let's not pretend as if he signs a max extension that takes him out of his prime with another team potentially. He could easily sign 5 years, have 9 years at the Pelicans, and still be late 20s and in his prime, and then move to another team like kind of thing. Yeah. So it's not necessarily make or break for Zion Williamson necessarily. But anyway, should we move on from that? You have them 10th, I have them 11th, which, we say is not going to make Zion Williamson want to sign a max extension next off-season. But lucky last, we'll get into the San Antonio Spurs. Alrighty, the San Antonio Spurs. You just made the comment off air there that you're not sure how long we're going to speak about this team because there's just not too much to talk about, to be honest. Notable ins, if you can call them that. Al-Farouq Aminu, been in the league quite a while. Zach Collins, bit of a strange pickup. Zach Collins, $21 million over 3 years, has not played for like 2 years. Bryn Forbes is back after winning a championship with the Bucks. Our man Jock Landale finally getting his opportunity in the NBA. Doug McDermott, I don't mind that pickup. Thaddeus Young can still be a reasonable player. And Josh Primo, however you pronounce it, very strange selection at pick 12 in the draft, but we'll see how he works out. Didn't really re-sign anyone notable, and outs go DeMar DeRozan, Georgie Jeng, Rudy Gay, our man Patty Mills, and Trey Lyles. Over-under line is 29.5. Geez, I'll tell you what. There are some young players on this roster that project to be reasonable NBA players, none of which to me project to be all-star caliber players. And I feel like you just go through every team in the league and you kind of know, one, either who their best player is, or two, who they're building around. If it's a young guy who's in their first or second year, who might not necessarily be their best player, but you know the franchise is building around them. The Spurs are one, maybe the only, if not one of just a few teams that I look at this roster and I think, who's their best player? Is there anyone that screams all-star potential? And is there anyone they're actually building around? I don't think they're, I can't answer those questions.
That's exactly what I did. I looked at Orlando and like the worst teams in the NBA, Cleveland even, and I just thought, yep, I can at least see who has the most potential here. Like Orlando,
you got Jalen Suggs with the Magic.
Jalen Suggs, and so obviously you got SGA. Every team, and in terms because it's actually like hopeless in terms of like opportunity in the future. DeJounte Murray, Keldon Johnson, those players. I don't
nice
see
NBA players. Nice, good players, reasonable,
reasonable players,
not carrying a franchise.
I can't really see any upside. But even some of the worst managed teams like Orlando, I can at least say, well, at least you just need maybe a Jalen Suggs or someone just to get healthy and be good. But yeah, I can't see anyone. If you had gun to your head, had to pick one person for this team, you could.
Keldon Johnson, but.
Yeah,
I mean, cool. He was in the Olympic squad, good enough to make that as a replacement player. So that's cool, and played pretty well last year in patches. I'll give him that. But I don't know, like DeJounte Murray, good defensive player, a bit limited offensively without a jumper kind of thing. He's like a Ben Simmons, but 6'5", so that doesn't really help. Like Zach Collins comes in, pick 10 from 4 years ago. Like Derek White, Lonnie Walker the fourth, all these kind of like they're not laughable. You said a chuckle. They're not laughable players. Like they're solid NBA players, but that's all they are to me. They just don't have the upside of a Jalen Suggs at Orlando or an Evan Mobley at Cleveland or SGA at the Thunder kind of thing. These other lowly ranked teams, and that's where I'm putting the Spurs right now, because half the issue is they don't have these players because they refuse to bottom out, and therefore they're not getting the top end picks. So again, this season's the draft just gone. They pick up Josh Primo with the 12th pick. Everyone's like, who's that? And
who is it?
Yeah, but if they didn't have, instead of having pick 12, if they had pick 5, then all of a sudden they get a Jalen Suggs, or they get a Josh Giddey, or they get a Jonathan Kuminga, or maybe Scotty Barnes falls, something in that top 7 kind of thing, rather than speculating on a guy at pick 12 who no one's really heard about and no one else had projected in their top 20. So if I'm the Spurs, just try and suck. And the problem is that's not in Greg Popovich's DNA. He's in his 70s. He's not about trying to lose games of basketball or not doing his best to win necessarily. Like, he's going out there to win games of basketball. And it's actually like Pop being the best coach in the NBA across this century by an absolute mile. What they're doing right now is not helping the future of the team. It's just flat out what it is. Like, for how good you've been, you're not actually helping the direction of the team right now, because you're trying to win games when, like, I'm never for tanking, but there are situations and teams that flat out should not try and win games of basketball. Like, it's just a thing. Like, it's in their best interest. Like, I know it sucks and we don't want to have it, but it's just what it is. We've got to call it how it is.
Well, the only reason I'm laughing is because I'm a Heat fan, so I've followed the Spurs for the better part of a decade, and the battles that we had in the early part. So to see them not make great moves, find diamonds in the rough is just weird for me, and I almost have to laugh about it. And Popovich, as you know, even at the start, he was losing games at the early part of the Olympics, and I wonder if it's a whole cultural reset is the plan. Like, actually getting rid of one of the greatest coaches in sports, full stop, is actually in their best interest, because he's, as you said, he's in his 70s. I don't know whether a rebuild is part of him. He's used to winning all the time. Do you think a full cultural reset and getting rid of him, bringing a new coach, tanking, trying a new style, because obviously what's happening isn't working?
Yeah, it's a tough one, because they're not going to get rid of him. He's like, he means so much to that franchise. They're not going to sack him. He's going to have to put his hand up at some point and just be like, I'm retiring. Could you ever see Greg Popovich coaching someone else? Because he's still coaching right now, which to me means he loves it. Like, he loves it, and that's great. He loves coaching and basketball and coaching an NBA team, and he's obviously been the most successful at it over the past 25, 30 years, one of the most successful of all time. I just wonder if he himself should look at this team and think, we're not going anywhere. And actually just be like, I don't know if you, like, put your hand up and say, yeah, okay, I'm going to leave. And then if you want to coach again, actually, like, promote yourself to other teams and say, hey, I'm available. I just don't know why it couldn't. Like, I've just seen Alistair Clarkson at Hawthorn, who's the best AFL coach of this century. And he's actually been pushed out the door by Hawthorn, which to me makes absolutely no sense. But he's having a year off, and he's a lot younger than Greg Popovich. He's like 20 years younger, so there's a bit of difference there. But Alistair Clarkson, I think, is going to coach another AFL team at some point. And it's going to look a bit weird because he's only ever coached Hawthorn, and he did it for, from 2006 or 2005 to 2020, like 15, 16 years kind of thing. But I just don't know if, like, Greg Popovich just sees this situation and thinks, I'm not getting anything out of this playing group. Well, like, why don't I just try and go to a team who the only thing might be that they need a good coach, and it could just click for them, and they could be a championship contender. Like,
so see him at the Wolves, I reckon. It was like a team that actually needs
someone
a lot
better
of
than
leadership.
that. Someone better than that.
Better than that. What?
I'm just trying to think of a team around the mark. I don't know. Keep talking and I'll think about it. I don't know.
There's someone. I reckon Popovich is honestly retiring because I actually read. I'm trying to see whether there's actually a Heat rumor page, but Eric Spoelstra might be taking over as the USA head coach for the whole future of like World Championship games and Olympics. So I wonder whether it's just Pop. I mean, Pop's been at the helm for 20 plus years. He's had a fantastic run. I wonder just for the betterment of. He would love the Spurs, and if it's better for the Spurs that he moves on. Like if you're that sort of person, then maybe it's time. But I won't have a huge expectations. Where did you have the Spurs finishing? Actually,
13th.
13th,
Yeah.
oh, exactly
13th with the Rockets and Thunder behind them.
I had them exactly the same spot.
Over underline of 29.5. Not touching that either. So
yeah, no.
Have you got any thoughts on the over underline?
No, not going to go anywhere near that.
Because they're going to try and win games again. Whilst Greg Popovich is there, they're trying to win games of basketball. So. Yeah, I don't know. It's just a weird situation, to be honest. And, yeah, I don't know. If I'm a Spurs fan, like, I've had all this success over the last, especially if I'm like 40 years old, and I've actually kind of been alive and been able to live through 5 championships in the last 22, 23 years, whatever it is. I've been through that. We've made the playoffs every year except for the last couple of seasons, for the last 20 plus seasons. Like that massive, 20 seasons of playoff basketball. If I've lived through that, what is the harm in just being like, all right, I'm happy for my team to suck and be one of the worst teams in the league for the next 3 or 4 seasons? If that means that we can get back up to championship contention, then what is like 3 or 4 years when you've just had 20 years of success? I know that you want eternal success. Like, that's cool, but it's just not realistic. So... Like, what's the harm in just sucking for a few years?
It's for the betterment of the franchise, honestly. But probably one of the lesser divisions, I reckon, the Southwest. Maybe a few storylines, but probably no contenders. I think we both have one team making the playoffs here.
Yeah, and your highest team out of this division was the Mavericks at 7th.
Yep.
This is the worst division. I have the Mavericks 4th. I'm still unsure about that. Everyone else is... What did we have? We had the Rockets at 14th, we had the Grizzlies at 9th, we had the Pelicans at 11th, we had the Spurs at 13th. That was me. So it's not a great division. Any kind of over-under line that you like. The Mavericks are $1.45 to win the division, which really, let's be honest, the Grizzlies are probably the only team that could potentially get close to them, but I don't think that'll happen. But $1.45 is too short. You're not taking that. Any over-under line that you particularly like?
No, maybe the Houston one. I'm surprised. 29 games.
27 and a half, yeah.
27. I'll go way under that. Maybe.
Okay.
Yeah, probably have to put that on part of the pod. But AFL Grand Final this weekend. Who's your pick? Who have you got to...
Geez, this is a 50-50 game. I don't know.
Really?
My heart says Melbourne. I think Melbourne are the better team. Dogs have had a better lead-up. I don't like the fact that Melbourne have played one game in 28 days.
One game in a month, yeah.
Dogs have had the perfect lead-up. 3 games, you get a bye, you get to reset, and then you go again for one final game. I just think that's the perfect lead-up. I think the Ds are better. My heart says the Ds. I think the Dogs might win, because it's probably 50-50, and so from a betting perspective, if there's any AFL fans that want to have a bet on it, I just think that the Ds are favourites, the Dogs are outsiders. I think it's a genuine 50-50. Either team could win, so you've got to take the value and take the outsider. That's just what I think. So if I'm having a bet on the head-to-head, I'm taking the Dogs. Your thoughts? I'm
praying that it's just a good game, because those 2 prelims were horrible. I didn't finish them. I stopped watching them, honestly. They were horrible.
Fair enough, too.
I want a good game. That's a star-studded team. A star-studded on both teams. So I just want a good game, mate.
Should be an absolutely great grand final. We're going to try and do the last division of our previews here on Sunday. Questionable, very questionable of whether that goes ahead, because I might be in bed all day after a carton of beverages. It's questionable. So, for those listening, we might have another podcast out on Sunday, but it is a very heavy question mark right now. But other than that, Lee, anything else to mention before we head?
No, that's me done, mate. It's a great weekend ahead. I'm very excited. Should be
I just can't, I don't know, just one final thing on the NBA. I'm getting to a stage now where we're talking too much about it. It's kind of
storylines, mate. There's storylines galore everywhere.
I know, but it's almost just, I just want to see action now. It seems like it's so far away, yet it's not far away at the same time. It's a weird feeling I'm having at the moment. We're only a few days away from training camp, so can't wait for it. Other than that, guys, check us out across all our social media. Plenty more to come before the start of the NBA regular season. Cheers, guys.